Hey everybody, this is Zach Ditmars here for Fish Talk Magazine. Thanks for tuning in for another edition of Live with Lenny. Tonight we're going to be discussing finding and working shallow water structure in the Chesapeake Bay for a variety of different species. I'd like to bring on our angler-in-chief, Mr. Lenny Bruno. Lenny, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Zach?
Doing great. We had an awesome day at the Annapolis Boat Show. It's kicked off today. Tons of cool stuff.
It did. There is a lot going on. In fact, we should tell folks what's coming, because if you haven't already gone to the boat show, people, you got to get there. First off, there's a gazillion cool new boats. And there are quite a few new models at the boat show this year. A lot of stuff I guarantee you haven't seen yet. Tomorrow is Conservation Day. We're going to be building reef balls at the fishing spot, which is right up by the hotel. What's the name of that hotel?
It's the Annapolis Waterfront Hotel. So it's the yacht basin. It's right between the Annapolis Yacht Club and the hotel. So it's a main entrance. You can come right in and check it out immediately.
Yeah, we got a lot going on there. Like I said, we got the reef ball building. CCA Executive Director Dave Sikorsky is going to be giving a couple seminars tomorrow. It should be really, really interesting. We also have, I got to get my glasses to check on this one, Laura Todd, the Alliance from the Chesapeake Bay, will be talking about what you can do at home and around town to help the Bay. So that's really good. That gives, local people really a way to chip in and help. And then Saturday and Sunday are all fishing seminars, and we're going to have Team Fish Talk 2 getting the ball rolling at 1 o'clock on Saturday. We're going to be talking about catching snakeheads, catching reds, catching rockfish. That should be a really interesting gig there. EJ Harmon will be talking about tips for fishing with kids starting at 2 o'clock. And then at 3 o'clock, I will be talking about what to do in the fall when the gulls don't cooperate. Because, man, nothing's worse than running out there and thinking you're going to see those birds diving and the fish churning water, and then they're just not there. What do? We're going to talk about that. Sunday, we got another great lineup. Brian Dolph is going to cover how to choose the best lure for the conditions. He's the old school tackle guy and does quite a bit of fishing. Mark Bangay will be talking about fly fishing the Chesapeake and its tributaries at 2. And I'm really looking forward to that one because, I'm not a fly sharpie. So it's really interesting to me to hear someone talk about some of the different tactics, techniques, lures that they use. And 3 o'clock, I'll be on again, and I'll talk about finding success in the tributaries when it's just too darn windy to get out onto the bay. But, the Annapolis Boat Show is not the only big thing going on this fall, is it?
No, it's not.
No, we've got a lot going on. After the powerboat show, there's something going on with sailboats. I don't know. I'm not sure what all that's about. We don't need to talk about that. But a couple weeks after that, we have the Fish for a Cure tournament coming up, right?
That's right.
And we've got a guest with us today, a Fish for a Cure board member. Ernie's going to come on and talk with us. And we want to let people know out there all about Fish for a Cure. Ernie, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me on. I'm definitely excited to be on the podcast, and I'm definitely interested in seeing some of those talks that you just laid out there for getting some fishing tips.
Cool. Well, make sure you come on by.
Sounds
but
good.
In the meantime, we want to make sure everybody knows about Fish for a Cure because this is a really important event. And folks, I got to tell you, I can't stand fishing tournaments. I really can't. Stress is the last thing I needed added to my fishing. And when I'm in a tournament, I do get stressed. I'm like, I got to win. But Fish for a Cure is not at all like that. It's not like you're going fishing for $1 million. Rather, you're going fishing for a really important cause. Ernie, why don't you tell us about what's going on here?
Absolutely. So Fish for a Cure, unlike a regular fishing tournament where you're out fishing for the largest fish or the longest stringer of fish, it's combined with the goal of raising funds. So each captain creates a boat. On that boat, you register on fishforacure.org, and you become a fundraising team. You register anglers, and those anglers can fish on the day of fishing for rockfish or invasive species or perch. There's multiple categories. And at the same time, you're utilizing your network and your creativity, and you can see some of the creativity in the way some of these fundraising teams and captains have created their fundraising challenge to raise funds. And what are those funds for? They're for the Anne Arundel Medical Center's nurse navigator program to support cancer patients. So and cancer is touched all of us very directly in some cases, very, indirectly in other cases. And as a patient is going through that treatment and their family, the last thing they need to worry about is how to navigate the system. So the position of nurse navigator was created through the Fish for a Cure charity, started in 2007 by a small group of guys in a neighborhood, my neighborhood. Grew from $450 the first year to we've raised $4.5 million to date. And the cool thing about it is there are no paid board members. It's a grassroots charity. Everything that you donate through the Captain's Challenge goes directly to fund these positions, nurse navigators at the hospital.
And I tell you what, when you talk to the folks who have been treated by these nurse navigators who have dealt with them, man, if that doesn't make you cry, nothing will. These people are so grateful. It's such an incredible help to them when they're going through what, I mean, it's got to be, one of the most difficult times in their lives.
Absolutely.
And it really, so the funds that you raise have a very real impact on some people's lives. I mean, it's kind of a big deal.
Right. It's financial support, nutritional support, psychological support of the patient directly, right? So the way we have the tournament arranged is that you fish on November 4th. Registration is open for boats till October 30th. And everyone returns from a full day of fishing to the South Annapolis Yacht Club. We've been there for 2 years now, which is a great fusion between the shore party, which follows the 4 o'clock check-in for all the boats to check in at South Annapolis Yacht Center. It's a combination of that party space and that boat docking space. And it's really in the heart of Annapolis, and it's been very great location for us.
And that shore party is quite an event.
Exactly. So
it's one heck of a party. But you know what always strikes me the most? You fish in the tournament. There is a fishing tournament component here. Let's say you win, right? I mean, that's cool. You win some awesome prizes. There are some really awesome prizes. There are some really significant gift certificates for fishing tackle, and there's some really cool stuff. But what's interesting is when the winners of the fishing are announced, man, everybody yells and screams and cheers and goes crazy. But when the winner of the Captain's Challenge is announced, the boat that raised the most funds for this cause, I mean, everyone just goes berserk. That is the real prize. That's the real bragging rights, really.
And that's where the creativity comes in. We're not very rigid. I'm sure you felt that at the shore party, right? Because it's quite a party. Where each team finds extremely creative ways to raise funds, partnering with local businesses, holding events. Just a quick plug, I'm holding an event at Metro on West Street on October 19th, for example. You partner with these local businesses and you put that money directly on your boat. And last year, the winning boat, I believe, raised $108,000 through a series of direct small donations, large donations, and big events.
And those events,
amazing.
Yeah, we normally find Team Fish Talk Prop Talk generally raises about a third of our total in one event, and that's our online auction, which will be coming up soon. We got all kinds of cool goodies to auction off. You people, if you see a notification on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, click on it. You're going to want to check it out. We got some really cool stuff coming. And just in case anybody right now decides they want to put a donation towards Team Fish Talk Prop Talk, Zach, can we get the link up there real quick? Let's pop that up there. All you got to do is go to fishtalkmag.com/F4AC. We appreciate the donation very much. We really, it's tough to compete, honestly, with some of the teams. Now, this year it's a little different because there's a Legends League.
There's a Legends League. So once you've won the Captain's Challenge, you get a nice Fish for a Cure jacket if you win the Captain's Challenge. And the jackets are sourced from top local Goodwill areas. And once you reach that tier, you move up into the Legends League. Now this is new this year, and then there's a leaderboard. You can see here alternating currents from Hello Electric, Real Council, and Laxfish. Big fundraisers, right? But there's now the Open League. If you scroll down a little bit, there's a second category where you can win the Captain's Challenge. Once you win the Open League, you move up into the Legends League.
And look at that team on top there in the Open League. Who's on that team?
All right, I might be on that team. So my previous team, Just in Time, won the Captain's Challenge years back. But this new team, led by Ken and Jen Scaturo, Lady Jen, hence Jen Scaturo, real go-getters. And you can see the teams underneath: Realtors Hooked on Giving Back, Max Scent, Lukey Bell, Admiral Bolito, Hullabaloo. Some of these are new teams, and Team All Tackle. You can't say enough about Keith Frazier and his generosity here and his support over the years for Fish for a Cure. And getting everybody together at the party. Everybody's been fishing all day. They check in at 4:00. You can feel that energy build, as you say, as we're approaching the awards for fishing. It's catch and release 100% this year, all the way through all the categories. So it's iAngler app. Take a picture of the fish. You get all the details at the captain's meeting that occurs the night before the fishing tournament on November 4th. So just a great time in general. Everyone gets involved a little bit at the beginning, and then they just get hooked, no pun intended, and they tend to stay, and they're either going to the support another team, going to the shore party, or they create their own team and grow. We even have a young team that doesn't have a boat, but they have a boat registered to create a fundraising team, and it's high school.
Nice.
High schoolers raising the team. They call it the senior board. So we're making sure that everyone that can get involved does get involved.
That's very cool. And I'll tell you what, Fish Talk and Prop Talk became a sponsor of the tournament probably 5 years ago now. And every year we've just gotten more and more involved, because every year it just becomes more and more important to us. But be that as it may, it is time to get on to the fishing portion of this program. So, Ernie, I'm going to bid you adieu. I'm going to thank you for bringing us in. Oh, there it is. There's our flag.
Yeah. That was my idea, by the way.
You're awesome.
Very nice. But everybody out there, if you're on the fence, I'm telling you right now, jump in right now. You still got plenty of time to hit this fundraising really hard. And, of course, we're going to all go fishing the first week in November. Just for the record, just so everybody knows, this is a free pass, people. Nobody in their right mind is going to give you for grief for joining this tournament, participating, and going fishing on November 4th. So, unless your daughter's wedding date is November 4th, you're going fishing. Okay. So, hey, I say take advantage of that, right?
Absolutely. Thank you for your support, and thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming, Ernie.
Ernie, see you soon.
All right, Zach, let's jump on into the fishing, man. Give me slide number 1. Let's talk about some shallow water structure.
Pump the brakes.
Oh, God. Oh, what'd I miss?
I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors this evening. I saw Lenny drooling over a custom cold molded Weaver fishing boat, Maryland made boat. We had a great Maryland boat seminar today. Lenny was just drooling over these quad 350 horsepower outboards.
They had to call maintenance over with a mop to get all the drool off the dock.
What manufacturer were those?
Those were Suzuki's.
This evening is presented by Suzuki. We know Lenny loves Suzuki. All his boats have Suzuki, and we just want to thank Suzuki for making tonight's broadcast possible. So,
yes.
One last mention. You can hop on over to fishtalkmag.com/Suzuki. There you'll find a map of Chesapeake region, Maryland, Delaware, and Virginia Suzuki service, repower, you name it. So check it out if you're interested in a repower or just need service for your existing Suzuki.
Yeah, it's quite extensive. 20 years ago, you would have had trouble finding a Suzuki shop. Today, they're all over the place. Just shows how much they've grown in the last couple of decades.
Tried and proven powerhouses, right?
Yeah, man.
All right. All right, I'll hop back here behind the curtain and bring up slide number 1.
Please. Excellent. So, slide number 1 is like a way to locate shallow water structure that I think pretty much all of us probably use these days. There it is, Google Earth. Yep. If you're not using Google Earth, you should. The one thing that I've found about it that is really easy to do is to be zoomed out too far, and you just simply miss a ton of stuff. This is a little spot in the mouth of the chop tank, and if you look on the left of the screen, you can see, okay, there's a point. You can see there's something going on up there. Is that a little island over there? Okay, so that's interesting, right? But you really got to zoom in and look to the right. Oh my gosh, this is funny. The little Suzuki marine bug is covering it up. There's a bunch of trees right. Oh, there we go. Okay, can we see the trees? Man, they're kind of tough to see on this. Didn't really come out so great. If you look in the lower right at the very bottom, you can just barely make out some trees. And those trees hold tons and tons of fish. And if you look at the island in the upper left, you can see there's this little point that kind of comes out on the bottom and that swings out. And that holds tons of fish. The other little telling detail that we gain by zooming in here is that there's a boat in there. So that tells you right there, okay, this is a spot that people fish. There's probably going to be some fish here. All right, let's go on to slide number 2. My very favorite way to find out about places is to go to our homepage, and in the upper right corner, see there's that little search box in the upper right. It says search right next to it. And you can see there that I typed in Potomac, and I hit search. Well, at the bottom of the page, we've got 10 Potomac River hotspots. Zach, is it possible to move me up or to the side or something? So that's displayed. There we go. Thank you. Top 10 Potomac River hotspots. That's just number 1. There's a bunch of results here going on. If you could scroll down, but I just did a screenshot here. There's multiple other articles. There's one on Potomac River wrecks and reefs. There's one on fishing the Middle Potomac. There's all kinds of Potomac River articles. So if you're looking at an area, let's say you had just looked at that shot on Google Earth, and then that was on the chop tank. Simply go to the homepage, type in chop tank, press search. You'll get a bunch of results. We've been publishing Fish Talk now for well over 6 years. And as it turns out, I mean, it kind of boggles my own mind. We've covered a lot of places in the bay. The vast majority of the tributaries, the more popular fishing spots in the main stem bay, you're going to find them on there. So just type the name into the search box, click go, and you're going to learn an awful lot about any particular spot. All right, let's go ahead to slide number 3, please. And now we're going to take a look at one thing that whenever you see it, you want to investigate further, and that's riprap. There is riprap all over the place. Whenever you've got riprap with current hitting it and decent depths, there's a very good likelihood that that's going to turn out to be a hot spot. Fish like hanging out around riprap. Now, this is Poplar Island. This was just a couple weeks ago, and this is Dylan, our reports editor, and casting along. We didn't catch a ton of fish there, but he caught this nice pup. Other times, this is a red hot zone. It has recently been hot, but mostly right at daybreak and right at sunset, not so much in the middle of the day, which is often going to be true of, some of the shallow water spots. This spot does have good depth right next to it, but those fish they're cranking right at daybreak and right at sunset. Been that way for a couple weeks. But the bottom line is, whenever you see that riprap, that should just put up a flag, right? And if you got a long wall of riprap, I'm not saying, spend all day fishing every inch of it, but look along that riprap for a point, look for a break in the rocks. Whenever you see a hole in the rocks, it's a really good sign. Normally it means the rocks fell out there. And where did they go? Well, they probably rolled right into the water. So now you got extra rocks underwater. So anytime you see that, pay attention. All right, take note of slide number 4, please. Let's take a look at another fish attracting zone. So this is a great picture of Prop Talk's editor, Kaylee. And this was in the Tangier Sound. And if you look in the background, beyond this beautiful speck she's holding, I know it's hard to look past that speck, people, but look beyond it, you can see the very distinct color change, right? And what's going on there is basically a tidal rip. And it's kind of tough to see, but you can see that dark spot right up against land up there in the kind of upper left. That's riprap. So now we've got riprap on shore and a tidal rip. So we're talking prime territory. Now that fish was not right up on top of that riprap. He was probably 20, 30 yards outside of it, but he was right along that tidal rip. And you could see it plain as day, both on the surface and in the color change. And that worked like magic. So that's another shallow water structure item to keep your eye out for, even though it's not a physical piece of structure, right? But the tidal rip, the color change, that's still structure. That's still a change in the water, an anomaly, and fish are going to pay attention to that. All right, let's go ahead to the next one, please. And let's see, get rid of me again, please, Zach, because it's in the lower left where we want to look at here. You can see the little islands, the little tree stumps sticking up. This is down at James Island, and whenever you see little islands not attached to shore, whenever you see sticks sticking up, that's worth investigating. Will it hold fish? Not necessarily. Maybe some days it will and some days it won't. But anytime you've got these physical structures that are visible to the eye, boy, you sure as heck want to check them out. Now, this area holds a lot more structure laying on the bottom than I ever knew until I upgraded my electronics with a side finder. I've now got a Humminbird on there, 16 Apex with the side scan. And I fished in this area quite a bit. And I always knew kind of the structure I could see. And I knew where there was some stuff that I couldn't see, but I'd snagged or I ran into with the boat a couple times too, to be perfectly honest with you. But the side scan opened up a whole new world to me. There was a ton of trees laying on the bottom, sort of in a crosshatch pattern, up above one of these islands that I had never known existed before. So, not everyone's got the side scan, but if you got it, tune it up, zoom it out, and take a good look around the visible structure and see if there's more that you can't see. Reminds me of Bishop's Head. Yeah, it's not that different. Okay, so Vince is chiming in saying structure is great, but how does the tide affect things low or high? So Vince, in shallow water, high water is almost always better. Not always. There will be some weird days when the fish are just up shallow. But what's more critical is that the tide is moving. You want that moving tide. When you've got a really dead tide, it can be completely high, and it's generally not going to be awesome fishing. It might be okay, but generally not awesome. There are certain spots. Every spot's a little different. There are certain spots that are only good when the tide is really high, but they're great when it is. And there are certain spots that produce even when it's low. There's no really like hard and fast rule about this. But again, the key is generally moving water as opposed to, one or the other. All right, let's bop on over to the next one here. We got another spot to look at. And you can see to David's left and right, above his head there, pier pilings. Piers are great structure. They really are. Now, there's one thing you got to keep in mind about them. You might have a shoreline with 30 piers on it, and 29 of those piers don't hold squat. One pier holds all the fish, and that pier can change through time. It can be one pier is hot this month, the other pier is hot that month. It can be one pier is hot all season, and then next season a completely different pier or series of piers gets hot. It changes. I can't tell you why, because I can't tell you the mind of a fish, but it changes through time. And the hot piers, the only way to find them is just to go along and cast one, the next. And so, early in the season, I will generally spend some time in the south because that's my home river. I'll generally spend some time just fishing piers, and I won't focus on any one. I'll just keep on the move. If I take 2-3 casts at a pier and I don't catch a fish, I'm certainly not going to hang around any longer. But generally speaking, sooner or later you'll come across that magic pier. Oh, you caught a fish? Okay, stop, fish it. Next thing you know, you've caught 5, 6, 8. Who knows? So again, when you're going to hit the piers, just keep on the move. Move until you locate some fish. That is critical. Amped Up's chiming in with he loves a mackerel color lure. And that, that's another thing I guess we should mention. We haven't really talked about the plugs And now Vince is asking, or I'm sorry, the colors. And now Vince is asking, do you like to throw plugs first and then go to soft baits? Vince, first light, top water. Okay. And then I go to jigs. Now, there are plenty of guys who are really good anglers who like to throw jerk baits, lip plugs. That totally works. Honestly, the main reason that I don't use them a whole bunch is because they all come with the treble hooks, and I don't want to throw them, and it's a hassle to swap them out. I don't spend a whole lot of time personally working with that stuff. I do love a topwater blow up, and I do have a bunch of topwater plugs where I've already switched out the trebles for singles. Those I'll throw, again, right at daybreak, right at sunset. We're talking of just ambient light when the sun is below the horizon, but there's still some light. That is a great time to do that. The rest of the time, I'm usually throwing the jigs, the soft plastics. But again, there are other anglers who are really good who they do like those jerk baits, and they do catch on them, no question about it. I wouldn't discourage it. Now there will be times when, even though these fish are shallow and up on structure, they're going to hit on bottom. You got to bounce that jig head right along the bottom, including along these pier pilings. When that's the case, obviously you're going to want to be throwing the jig. All right. Wayne's chiming in here and saying, use the Google historic photos function to find images taken when low water and clear water were present. Yep. That's absolutely true. And it's particularly true when you find the pictures from the winter time. In the wintertime, a lot of times we get really low tides. And sometimes you can find some imagery where the water's like 3 feet lower than normal, and you can find stuff that is invisible the rest of the time. So thank you, Wayne, for bringing that up. That's important to point out. Rich is saying, yes, sir, top water single hooks. Yes, the trebles really do a number on the fish. And by the way, they also are awesome at snagging your shirt, your finger, whatever. I wish more of the manufacturers would switch over to selling those lures with singles. Mirror at one time had the swing and single, and I think they were before their time. They didn't catch on so great. But more people are aware of this now. And it really, if you're throwing a plug with a treble hook, I'll bet that 1 out of every 10 fish you catch, it's going to be kind of messed up, sometimes really bad. But if you got that single on there, you cut that down by more than half, probably, 5 times. All right. Well, Eric, if a jig with a paddle tail doesn't produce me, I'll switch up to a BKD eel. Quick jerks off the bottom. Okay, so that's an interesting tip there. And Eric certainly fishes every once in a blue moon. He might catch a fish or two now and again. Definitely something to keep in mind. Bustin' baits fluke with a 5.0 worm hook and a twitch. Walk the dog, and you'll get them just as well as a jerk bait. That I haven't tried that, but that short as heck sounds to me like it's going to be an effective tactic. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, we got any more questions rolling in, Zach, or should we head on over to the next slide? Oh, we're going to the next slide. Okay, so this is a really interesting one here. This is on the Potomac. This is from the year before last. And this fish was caught over rocks on the bottom in 12 feet of water. Now, I didn't find him on my own. I might have found him by accident another day, but, I did not find these on my own. I did not see him on Google Earth. It is simply a charted spot that says RCK. That means rock on the charts. It's going to be on your GPS if you have a decent mapping chip in there. It's a long-term charted spot. It's not a secret. Lots of people fish it. You can see there's a kayaker in the background there. There are 2 or 3 of these in a series. He was on the one farther out. But it is a really good spot. On a Saturday, it's probably going to be tough to fish because there will be a lot of boats there. It's a known rock. But you go there on a weekday, usually there aren't folks there. And when you drop your jig down and bounce it along the bottom there, you literally feel it pop. You feel it hit that rock. It's a very different feel than a soft bottom. And you bounce your jig along bottom. And that was one. Oh, I can't remember exactly how many we caught that day, but that was one of a bunch. We caught a bunch of reds. Another day there, I've had multiple awesome days on reds there. Caught a lot of flounder there. Gosh, what else? There's little sea bass there. There's all kinds of stuff on that rocky bottom. And again, this is just something you're going to find by looking at your chart. You're not going to see it on Google Earth. You're not going to visibly see it. You're not really going to see it on your fish finder. With the side scan, you can get a little, you can go, whoa, that's a little weird. You know, what's going on there? That's a little odd. But you would have to be going, you know, an appropriate speed, looking at your side scan in that area to find it. But you go to your charts. They're right there. John's asking, where's the location of this area? Point Lookout. It's very close to Point Lookout. I want to say there are 3 charted rocks right there. And then if you also look on the east side of Point Lookout and go north just a little bit, there are a couple other spots where there are charted rocky hard bottom. Butler's Rocks is one. I'm blanking on the name of the others. There are multiples that are really good areas. They hold fish, and they're right there on the charts. Specks hanging there too. I didn't get any specks on those rocks, those 2 trips, but Eric fishes this area a good bit, so I'm sure he's right about that. Only fishes on days that end in Y. I think that's a great idea. Yeah. Fishing on days that end in Y. I like it. Or you could also just go fishing, you know, like 7 of the days a week, and then you'd pretty much be fishing right alongside Eric. All right, Zach, go ahead and take me to the next one. So now this is a toughie. This one's a toughie. This is a spot. Zach, you know it well. You've been there with me many times. Eric has been there with me before. There are all these little underwater mounds. I don't know what the heck they come from. It's just like someone took a watermelon, cut one round end off, and then set it on the flat part, sticking up. They're like 1.5 feet, 2 feet, maybe not even 2 feet, like 1.5 feet tall. And there are little fields of them. There's 20 over here and 10 over there. And it is a strange thing. I don't know where the heck they came from. I found them not because I was even specifically looking at them, right? I found them because there were guys fishing in the area, and there were a lot of fish in the area being caught. And then that bite died out. And then there was nobody fishing there anymore. And I went back to check it just to see if there were fish there. And I just noticed something weird on my fish finder. It was really calm out, so the boat wasn't going up and down a lot. And I just saw these little blips on the bottom. Didn't really see a lot of fish around them. We're talking about in 6 to 9 feet of water. Not even 9, 6 to 8. When a really high tide, it might hit 9. And there were just these little blips on the fish finder. And, you know, I marked the spot on my chart plotter just out of curiosity. And I marked a couple of them. And then through time, I found that I could pretty reliably catch fish on them. And I got so darn curious, I took my underwater ice fishing camera one day, and I anchored the boat on them, and I dropped it down and looked. And I saw these little mounds. Couldn't identify just what they are, but I saw all these little mounds. So I know that's, you know, what's there. Since then, looking at this area with the side finder, I've found several other little pockets of them, and they're very distinct. You can really, you know it when you see them. Quite often they hold fish. Now, again, this is a toughie. This is not a spot you can say, I'm going to research and I'm going to find this type of spot. This is more like the kind of thing where you luck into it. What's really critical is you keep track of it. Plug that into your chart plotter. Once a year, pull up your chart plotter, go down to your boat, pull up your chart plotter, take a notepad with you, write down all your numbers. I'm saying just write them down, okay? I know they should be on the chip. Forget about that. Write them down. Take them home, put them in a drawer, and then forget about them, okay? And then one day, if your electronics totally fry, it won't be a problem. You'll have it all. You can also take out the chip, take it home, pop it up on the computer, save them that way. That's great. I even get nervous just pulling the chip out of the machine. I'm like, oh my God, is something going to go wrong? Is it going to fall out of my pocket on the way home? Is it going to get wet? Who knows? I like to just pull it up on screen, write it on. I've got them right here in my, look, here they are in my desk drawer. All my many, many numbers written down all over the place. Some I typed in and printed out. Right in my desk drawer. I keep them right here. That's where they live. And every year I update them. And maybe that's going a little overboard. I don't know. But these spots like this are hard won. You know, you might find 1, 2, 3 a year, and you're probably not going to find more than that. So to me, it's really critical to do the keep track part. Just keep track. All right, Zach, why don't you take us over to the next slide here?
Got time for a quick question?
Of course, pop it on up, man. Looking ahead, at what temp do you think the bait and rockfish start moving out of the rivers? You know what, Rich? Man, that is a really tough question. And I'm going to give you a total slacker answer and say, I don't know. And here's why. I want to be real specific about why. I have seen seasons where the water got into the 50s and they all pushed out. And I have seen seasons where literally the last day of rockfish season, which back then was later, it was not December 10th. It was like December 25th, or well, probably wasn't the 25th, 20th, whatever the old late date was 4 or 5 years ago. I've had last day of rockfish season where I'm casting into a shallow water spot in the south, 3 feet of water, and I've caught rockfish, good rockfish. It's surprising, but sometimes they stick. Now the bait right now has already begun to push out a little bit, but not much. We had that little bit of cool off and then it warmed back up again. And I'm seeing bunker in the creeks, up the creeks, not just in them, but up them still. They're in the river, and they're also a large amount out in the bay already. But that's not really because of the fish moving out. That's because the bunker must have had a really good spawn year. There have been hordes of little babies all over the darn place all year long. Ever since like May, I've been seeing them out in the main stem bay going, why are these little baby bunker out here? Why aren't they in the rivers? Well, they're also in the rivers. There have just been a ton of little babies around. I don't know the scientific reason why, but it seems like they had a really, really good spawn this year. Now they're about this big. They're I can get my hand on the screen. There we go. Now they're about that big. They're like 3.5 inches long, but they are still in the creek. So my guess is, unless we have a really abrupt temperature shift, we're going to have plenty of bunker in the rivers, in the creeks for probably another, through the month, probably through October, I would guess. A big weather system could change that, but we'll have to see. Hey, there's Junior chiming in saying good info. Thanks. We went out the other day and we had fish busting on bunker well outside the river. They were out kind of near the green number 1, all the way out in the main stem bay, and there were hordes of bunker out there. There were still also hordes of them still in the river, and there's cutlass fish that showed up this year. They were out in open water, but they were eating little baby bunker. There were just tons of them around. So I'd say the outlook is very, very good for the river fishing to continue to be very, very good for some indeterminable period of time, but probably through the month, likely well into November, and potentially all the way into December. We'll have to see what the weather does. A couple of really, it seems like it's the really abrupt snaps that get those fish moving, that shove them out of the creeks and the rivers, more so than a slow change. But you never know. Like I say, last day of rockfish season, man, you could catch rockfish in the shallows. I should add, that normally happens on a really sunny day late in the day, like in the late afternoon, when you do have the shallows warming up a little bit. That's when that's more likely to happen. All right, Rich, you'll see me too, man. I can't wait. Eric, I hope you did not screenshot those notes. Although, if you called me and asked nicely and maybe, kick in a little bit, you could get a hold of them. Right? There's Gary. Yeah. Where, I don't know. I don't have a set price. Oh, evidently this is a theme now. A lot of bait in the surface last night around poplar. Okay, cool. Yeah, and again, the little babies were all over this summer. They're getting big now. The fish are really paying attention to them. All the way up into the Belgrove ponds. Holy cow. That is wild. I've never even heard of that before. Because that's up Belgrove. You're talking, isn't that, I believe that's north of Baltimore on the Patapsco, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's even north of like the city and the harbor. I mean, that's way up there. That is terrifically interesting. They must have just had a really successful spawn this year, which has happened before. I remember, I think it was the late 80s or early 90s this happened. And we had a couple seasons in a row where we just had monstrous schools of bunker out on the bay. Hopefully that did happen again, because that will bring a lot of life back up. The trimmed down numbers of rockfish that are out there will have plenty to eat. Patapsco is Belgrove, but the Belgrove ponds, I think they're north of Baltimore. I could be wrong about that.
No, I think it's south of Baltimore, but
Is it south of Baltimore?
yeah, it's like North Anne Arundel County, Brooklyn Park, as the Patapsco flows south of the harbor.
Brooklyn Park. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It is way up there. Anyway, you cut it. And those ponds are kind of attached to the river, as I recall. It's probably been 20 years since I've fished them.
Brandon from Brown Dog says he'd like to work on your boat and just check out your MFD for some education.
We might be able to work something out there, you know.
Junior snagged a couple bunkers last night while he was fishing a poplar.
And snagged one last week when we were fishing together.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's pop over to the next slide. So this is Zach with a very nice fish. And I picked out this slide in particular because this is not what I use in the shallows. Now, you're going to find that on several of my rods from this time of year pretty much moving forward. My rule is when it's cool enough out that I got to start putting on my jacket, that's kind of when I like to start to add skirts to stuff. Excuse me. That's when that larger profile and that slower sink, that kind of seems to really pick up the pace as opposed to just a bare jig. But this was out in open water. And you will not find me throwing a jig like this in the shallows on structure. I stay away from the skirts because I'm trying to constantly move that jig, you know, past and off of that structure. I'm not giving the slow up and down bounce along the bottom. That's more often where that skirt's really going to come into play. So go ahead and take us to the next slide, if you would, please, Zach. And that is going to take us over to what I do like is just a 4 to 5 inch paddle tail. I grabbed this picture because it was a nice close-up that showed the paddle tail. That was, I think that's an electric chicken, and you just can't see the other side of the jig, if I remember right. I like the electric chicken. I like the chartreuse. My very favorite these days is a simple pearl white. That's what I really like, just a simple pearl white. 80% of the time, I find that catches the most fish. Now, there will be days when that's not true. There are some days when chartreuse is going to beat it. There's some days when bubblegum pink will beat it. That's another really good color. I always have that in my box. There are days when it's really dark, very, very low light, that purple just tears it up. That really dark sky, super low light, purple's a good one. But as a general rule of thumb, I'm throwing that size, that type, and I'm always starting with pearl white, pretty much. That's just how it's become. 10 years ago, that wouldn't have been true. 10 years ago, it would have been chartreuse. But 10 years ago, the watercolor in the bay was a little different. We've got a little more of a clear color these days. Steve's asking about jig weight and hook size. A half an ounce is what I like, half an ounce jig head for fishing in water, let's say under 8 feet. When it gets to 8-10 feet, I might want to go to 3/4 or a 5/8, just to make sure that I can still work bottom effectively. The less wind there is, the lighter I'm going to tend to use. Excuse me. I do like to use the lightest possible. So I might trim that down even more if it's a dead calm day. When there's a little bit of wind, there's a lot more motion. I might need to bump that up. You know, there have been days when I've been throwing 3/4 of an ounce at riprap that drops off into 2-3 feet of water. Because when it's really windy, that you get that bow in your line, you can't keep it taut, you can't feel bottom as well. You might need to amp it up. It all depends a little bit on the conditions. Hook size, honestly, I don't even look at the hook. I'm looking at the jig. And most of the time, I'm going to be using like a BKD head, something similar to that style. And those hooks, they don't have like a different hook size on a half ounce jig. All their half ounces have the same hook size. I wish they're all down on the boat right now. I don't think I can even look at one and say what the hook size is. I believe it's printed on the package though. But I don't even look at it. You know, I'm just going, that half ounce jig head matches up with a 4-inch paddle tail wonderfully, or a 5-inch matches up wonderfully. And whatever that size is, maybe, I don't know, maybe someone will chime in and let us know what those half-ounce BKDs are. Thanks, Amped Up, for joining us. Have a good one. Pearl white and green chartreuse. So the Z-Mans I do also like. They can be a little tougher to get onto some of these jig heads. And if bluefish aren't a problem and toothy fish aren't around and I'm not worried about it, I usually won't reach for them just because they, can be a little bit of a hassle to rig them up. There are some tricks you can use to make it easier, to make them work better, and some different heads that they work better. If you got the right heads, man, if there are toothy fish around, they sure as heck are what you want to throw. Like, no question.
I think I caught like 20-something bluefish on one Z-Man.
You can do it, right? They will live through anything.
Okay, it was like 8, but whatever.
I don't know. If it was on my boat, it was probably 20. But if we were on someone else's boat, it was probably 8. That's what I'm saying. All right. I think we got one more slide to pop up here. And if anyone's got any questions they've been holding back on, feel free to go ahead and type them in right now, because we're going to move to this.
I do have one question I was holding, but let's jump to the last slide and then we'll.
Okay, and then we'll hit the questions. Excuse me. So I popped this one up here. This is using my stock 5-inch paddle tails, but I wanted everyone to see, it doesn't matter what we've been talking about tonight. It doesn't matter if you're throwing in the shallows of the Elk River all the way up north or the Elizabeth River all the way down south. It really doesn't matter if you're targeting specks, reds, rockfish. This is all applicable. Now, I will tweak some things. If I'm throwing at specks and I'm not catching, I will reach for bubblegum pink. Some days they love it. I'll try the herky jerky retrieve, which is a little different. If you're not familiar with the herky jerky, head right over to fishtalkmag.com, go to the search box, type in herky jerky. We have a whole feature article in there on it. And some days the specs just love that style of retrieve for whatever reason. But these these kinds of spots, these kinds of lures, these kinds of colors, they will catch all these fish. They're really effective on all of them. Many people down south, particularly if they're going for reds and specks, are going to add a popping cork rig with a shrimp under it to the list. That works great. I got no argument with that. For whatever reason, I find that once you get above, really once you get into Maryland waters, once you get north of the Potomac, the popping cork just doesn't work the way it does down south. Maybe it's the presence of shrimp. I don't know. Someone else may have different experience with that. But I find, excuse me, the pop paws with a shrimp under it, while it works great down south, just doesn't work so much up north. I have caught rockfish on it. It does work a little bit. But I've also sat there and watched other people catch more fish than me and said, all right, to heck with this, cut it off, tied on a jig, and started, keeping pace with everybody else. So it does work for the species across the board. I should add, I was just corresponding with someone earlier today who had a great day on the Pocomoke today, multiple specks, multiple reds, using the popping cork pop paws with a shrimp. And he mentioned he had heard that I fish them different, how and why. Well, the different thing that I do is I crank them, I chug them along. I crank them and move them. But it's not for these fish, and it's not in the shallows. That's something that I do for Spanish mackerel, for bluefish, rockfish, and open water. And it does seem to call in the fish, but it's really not a shallows kind of thing. That's really more of a, active feeding out in open water kind of deal. So Greg's saying he's tried the popping cork to no avail thus far. Like I say, I have caught some fish on it up north. I have tried it, but I've shied away from it. Vince is asking, would a bucktail with deer hair and a paddle tail give you the same profile with a skirt in the water? Yeah, Vince, it will. It will. And I have seen entire seasons, where a bucktail with a plastic behind it outfished a straight up jig head or a skirted jig every dang day of the week. It happened 8-9 years ago. And then this spring, actually, the bucktail was working really well. Jigs were still catching, but the bucktail was working really well. It's not what I start with for one simple reason, and that's that in general, you don't see a bucktail with a good holder on the shank that'll keep that plastic up there. Usually most guys just tie them on heads. They don't have that little notch, and you shove the plastic up there, you get a missed strike, it gets yanked down, you get a missed strike, it gets yanked down. Next thing you know, the plastic's trashed, you got to throw it away. It's just a little bit of a pain in the butt. So I generally don't do it. But if you looked on my boat right now, you open up my tackle box right now, you will find at least 4 or 5 bucktails that are sitting there that are waiting for a tough bite when I will shove the plastic up there and give it a shot. I haven't tried gluing them. I tend to not to love the glue because it adds another step, but I also have started using it in some cases, particularly with the Z-Mans when they won't stay in place. If anybody has tried the glue with a bucktail with a plastic, please let us know how it works. I don't know if that ends up yanking out bucktail hairs or what. I'm sure someone out there has tried it, but I wonder if that would work a little better for holding the plastic up there. Excuse me.
All right. Tim has a good point. Take a cold drink, Lenny. There he goes.
I know, man.
You're working your throat out. You have a lot of talking to do this week.
You're right, Tim. And I'm telling you, it's because we came from the boat show. I've been at the boat show all day shooting videos and talking to people. And yeah, man, my throat's getting worn out. I don't know why it is, but it seems like every year the Live with Lenny seems to coincide with the boat show. And we end up going to the boat show and then running home and doing this real quick right after.
All right.
Woo, sorry about that. All right. Do we have any more questions lined up, Zach? Who's got a thought?
Let's see. We got lots of comments. Let's see. Lots of comments. I had a question I was holding, so I'm bringing that up. Are you done with this slide? You want to go big?
Yeah, man.
All right. So, pretty good question. Do you have any material on side scan on Fish Talk?
Interesting question, Will. We do. Not extensive, but we do have one full feature article that goes into it. Gosh, Zach, do you remember the name? It just ran a couple months ago.
Yeah, I'm hitting the search box right now.
All right, he'll find it. Again, going to the website and just plugging into the search box is the easiest way. In fact, I know I did it one experience with the Humminbird Apex. So Humminbird Apex is mentioned in there. You probably get 4 or 5 false returns in the right one somewhere in there, but it will pop up. And we did, but I'm also going to tell you, Will, I've had a side scan capable unit well over 10 years. I ended up with a Lowrance HDS right when they first started doing side scan, upgraded the transducer, upgraded a few odds and ends. The black box got upgraded. But I never really found it had the same utility that this Humminbird does. It was great for finding structure. It really was pretty dang tough to ID fish and really know when you were looking at fish. And I got to tell you, the Humminbird is a whole new ballgame. It really is. So I'm still getting used to it. I've been using it for 1 year now. I'm definitely not a pro with it. I would have said with the old unit, I really had a handle on using it to the best of its ability, but this is just a different ball game. So this is just beginning, and this particular feature, I want to point out, I really felt it necessary to go to the pros. So I talked to Kevin over at Marcom, who deals with these every day, and I got advice from him on it. We also have another feature that was by Pete Dahlberg, from when it was his experience using the side scan. That was not as much in the shallows. It included some in the shallows, but it was more on, I think, looking for the reds. I might be wrong, but it was on some other stuff too. But yeah, you will find it. Actually, if you just pop side scan in, I'll bet that works.
Is it Marine Electronics Upgrade? Is that the name of the article?
I think that's right. I think that's right. Marine Electronics Upgrade.
And I type side dash scan. That's gets the best result.
Cool. Side dash scan. Thank you, Zach, for that quick action.
No problem. Side scan with cats is tough.
That's true, but even when it was, the boat was just sitting there, I never was able to use it quite the same way as I've been able to use this one. This one, I tell you what, when you see fish, you're like, oh, there's fish. Like, you know it. And that was just never the case before. There, sometimes I would see a little wispy thing and be like, oh, I think that's a fish. But it's Question: we're going out again. When are we going out again? Was a fun day last time. Junior, I don't know, but we are going to go out again because that was a heck of a fun trip. That was a great time. A lot of success with a purple haze tsunami plastic. Most of the local shops do not have this color. Interesting. Greg, the first thing that goes through my head is I want to know what the light conditions and the water conditions were like that day. Because I've got purple in my box. I've always got purple in my box. I generally don't reach for it unless it's low light or discolored water. That can also, have a big bearing on how that stuff shows up. So I wonder. And Pat's chiming in about Jersey and jig strips, the pork rind. I have tried it. The stuff does work. The old pork rind worked great. Heck, there were years ago, we would take a bucktail. This is kind of it's not pre-plastic, but plastic hadn't really caught on the way it has now. And I'm talking, I was a little kid back then. We would take a bucktail and just put the pork rind on there, and that was your lure. And that worked great. And it does work great. It does. Of course, the old pork rind, you couldn't destroy that stuff. You catch fish on it all day long, and then literally take a pair of pliers and get it off the hook and drop it back in the jar. Maybe that's why it went away, because we had the same 3 jars of pork rind on my dad's boat the entire time he owned it.
And somebody revived that company, right? We saw it at ICAST a couple years ago.
I heard something about that. I don't know if it's the same pork rind. It was the Uncle Josh.
Yeah, it was Uncle Josh, but it's a new company. Just sort of bought the name, I think. But
Is it still called Uncle Josh?
yes.
Oh, cool.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, the pork rind strips, I've gotten those. I have those strips. They're going to be down on the boat. Well, still got some Uncle Josh.
How old are your pork rinds, Walt?
There is no expiration date on that stuff. None. And Jonathan saying he caught a lot of fish trolling bucktails with pork rinds. Absolutely. Back in the 90s. Yeah, man. Yeah, 88. I'm sure it goes back into the 70s. I can't say I specifically remember that too terribly well. I would have been like 10 years old, but we always, I'm sure we did. We always used, it was the old Uncle Josh. And we never did buy new jars. I'm not kidding. It was the same jars on the boat the whole time.
Some newer ones.
Well, it's got some newer ones. Okay. It must be because you lost the old ones. They certainly didn't go bad, and no bluefish chewed through them. You bring back a bucktail with no hair, and the pork rind would still be there. Oh man, we got any more questions flowing, Zach? I have no idea if we're hitting the clock. We're right up against 7. We're right up against 7 o'clock. So if anybody's got a final thought, final question, be sure to pop it in there. In the meantime, I'm going to remind everybody, Annapolis Boat Show, just past the hotel, right by the entrance there. We're going to have how-to fishing seminars Saturday and Sunday on the hour, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. At 4 o'clock, we're also having happy hours afterwards. We're just going to kind of hang out. Puster's has got a little bar right there. I'll be there. We're just going to hang out and talk fishing. And Friday's Conservation Day. And don't forget, if you go to the boat show, please head over there and make a reef ball. The reef ball trailer is all set up. You can make a reef ball on the site. And those reef balls, man, they do some good. So
bring the kids. Teach them about creating habitat in Chesapeake.
And remember what happened the last time I dropped a line. You were there right on some reef balls in the Chesapeake Bay. What'd I catch?
Flounder, sea bass. We caught all kinds of stuff.
We caught a bunch of little flounder, a bunch of sea bass. They're the life that comes in, and that was at Tillman Reef, by the way, in case anyone's wondering. Right north of the Chop Tank, south of Poplar. This is another spot you can find on your chart. It is a charted reef site, and it is full of reef balls. It's full of all kinds of other stuff. I don't even know what the heck else is out there. Earlier this year, it was really good for rockfish when it was really hard to find a rockfish. I think it was in the Middle Bay Zone. When they were all up at the Patapsco, this spot was holding some rockfish. So these reef balls are a really good thing. They create tremendous habitat for the fish, and we should all be pitching in and building more of them. So I'm saying you should go to the boat show just for that.
Absolutely. So Lenny mentioned a bunch of events. Quite a lot going on. And it's a little hard to navigate, so I'm just going to show you real quick. If you go to the Annapolis Boat Show website, to find all the events going on at the Fish Talk fishing spot this weekend, you click on highlights, scroll down to the Fish Talk fishing spot. There you'll find all the stuff going on. It's a little hard to navigate to. And here's your schedule of seminars and happy hours. So,
And gosh, doing that just reminded me. I can't believe I forgot and left this out. Anybody who's got kids, bring them over to the fishing spot. We've got goodies for them. Bring them on by. We got a bunch of goodies. We got Fish Talk stickers. We got all kinds of stuff. We got some tackle boxes. We got lures. We're going to give away tackle boxes till they're gone. We got extra lures. We've got all kinds of stuff. So come on by the fishing spot and bring the kids and build a reef ball.
All right. We got a couple questions come in. You want to do a lightning round before we close out?
Well, yeah, I hate to leave a question unanswered. With seven, yeah, it's only 7:01. Yeah. Let's bang them out. What do we got?
All right. So Mike was asking, are channel markers worth checking out, or is boat traffic an issue?
Okay, well, boat traffic is an issue. Yeah, always is. Not much you can do about it, but if you start early and fish late, you can usually get around it. Are channel markers worth checking out for fish? Yeah, they absolutely are. It's interesting. There are a couple particular channel markers that I know of that regularly hold fish, but it's the kind of thing where like you'll find them there one day and then the next day they're not, and you won't see them there, for months at a time, and then one day they're there again. So check them quick. I just, I stop as I'm running in or out. I'll take maybe 2 casts. If I don't get a bite, I'm out of there. And I probably won't check it for the next, 3-4 trips in and out. And then a few weeks later, I haven't checked it in a while. I just check it. Just stop in, take a couple casts, check it out. You do want to let your, generally speaking, because the channel markers are in fairly deep water, you do want to let your lure sink down to the bottom, and you want to be right next to it. I mean, you want that lure to land 6 inches from that channel marker. Let it sink down till it hits bottom, and then bounce it back. The markers that have the triple or quad poles, as a rule of thumb, are better than single poles. But yeah, absolutely. Check them. Don't spend a lot of time there, but give them a quick poke. And if you don't catch anything, don't worry about it. Move on a month later, 2 weeks later, whatever, check them again. And just go like that. And if you keep doing that on channel markers, you will find fish. You will find fish on some of them. And Jonathan's asking, where's a good trolling bite now? I'm hearing a lot of poor efforts near me. Anyone having success trolling? So, Jonathan, just today, actually, I got 2 to mention to you. Today, we were talking to folks. One came up near Love Point, but they were relatively small fish. It was mostly like 18-inch rockfish. Eastern Bay has got some rockfish breaking water at times. Trollers have been catching them. They've also been on the south side of Poplar. There have been bluefish breaking water. Trollers can certainly catch them up. I've seen a couple boats trolling outside of the mouth of the south and the west near the Green One. And I didn't talk to them, but that's kind of near. Remember, Zach, we saw them trolling the other night. And they were sticking in a really specific area. They were doing tight turns. So I don't think they were just wasting time. I think they were catching. What else we've been hearing about trolling bites? No others are really popping into my head at the moment, but check the reports. The reports will be coming out. Tomorrow morning. They'll be in there tomorrow morning. I'll give you, here's a little secret reports tip for everybody that no one else knows if you're not watching tonight. Because I have to go to the boat show tomorrow, I won't be home, so I can't do the fishing reports. So Dylan sent them to me this afternoon. And as soon as we get done tonight, I'm going to eat some dinner, and then I'm going to get on the reports. So they'll actually be posted early. They'll be up tonight. And I guarantee you he'll have some information there we haven't talked about because he talks to a lot of sources. So check them in, I don't know, maybe 3 hours. And there'll be some new intel in there. You can beat everyone to it.
You're gonna have to get the reports up by midnight now.
Yeah.
So
boat show season. What can you do?
All right. Well, so we had a couple more questions, and David Rudo gave some great responses. So thanks, Tyler, for your interest about James Island. It looks like David gave some great answers. So,
and Dave will be one of our speakers at 1:00. He'll be with Team Fish Talk 2. Our young guns are going to be there. Dylan, our reports editor, Mark, a real real sharpie on snakeheads. He's going to be there. So 1 o'clock Saturday, that'll be a really good one.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Suzuki, for sponsoring our presentation, and we hope to see you guys at the boat show. A lot of people said they're going to be there, and looking forward to it.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We will see you soon.
Good night.